Good day, everyone, and welcome to the One Open Door podcast. My name is David McKay. This is a place for talks and conversations about spiritual practice and about how to live the teachings of the Buddha right here, right now in this very world we live in. If you are someone who would be interested in taking advantage of the supports for practice that I offer, and if you would be interested in participating in the Sangha that I facilitate, I'd encourage you to go to www.theoneopendoor.org and see what we have available. We have morning meditation every day, virtual groups on Thursdays and Sundays, workshops, classes, retreats even coming up now that the virus is passing along, and other things. And so if you would be interested in participating in any of those things, then just let me know. There's a way to send me a message through the website, or you can just email me at djmckay429@gmail.com. I hope you enjoy the experience today. So today I'm very pleased, back by popular demand, here comes our friend Janet. And Janet is here to help me and help us explore something particular. Hey, Janet.
Hi, David. Thanks for the introduction. I'm excited to be here again.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. I really feel like I've gotten feedback that people really like it when there's a conversation that's happening. And so, yeah, I really appreciate you showing up for this because I think it makes it more digestible and easier for people to understand the kind of things we're talking about. So I'm actually not going to introduce the topic, and I'm figuring we can just kind of jump in, and then what we'll be talking about today will become clear as we go along. Do you have a place for us to start, Janet?
Yeah, I was thinking about my week or so, and was thinking, hey, this would be fun to kind of get some insights for you and to share, because I'm guessing other people might struggle with this a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the content is weight gain,
Okay.
or even my self-esteem in regards to, or my self-love regards to my weight.
Okay.
I've gained about 30 plus pounds in this last year.
Okay.
But most of my life, it's been hard in and out of,
Mm-hmm.
weight loss and weight gain. And I'm really beating myself up about it. And I'm really sick of it. And I realized I haven't talked with you much about it. So I just feel like now is a great time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of people have that as an issue. Apparently, I've heard too that, especially during COVID, that's
Yeah.
something people have been struggling with. And
Yep.
Lord knows, in our cultures, we have so much conditioning that attaches our sense of self-worth and value with the way we look and everything, and particularly for women. And body size is just a huge thing, and self-hate, has a really vicious way of attaching to that and making a person miserable because they're not meeting the standards and expectations and all that kind of thing.
Exactly. And I feel like I've been really doing this practice. It's really changed my life. I can apply it in so many ways. But I feel like there's some things that I'm just kind of in the weeds of,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
and pretty identified. And I thought,
Mm-hmm.
you know what, let me share. And then also with the thought of, maybe others can identify and then disidentify along with me.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, so what do
Yeah.
you, just to start us off, let's kind of get the big picture. Like, what do you see about how the process works to cause suffering around this for you? So what are you aware of, would you say, at this point?
Yeah, I can really see, I mean, vocabulary wise, I remember you teaching us about the battery cycle,
Mm-hmm.
a year or so ago, and I'm realizing that I'm pretty much in this battery cycle, this circle of just never enough and beating myself up, and everything I do, whether I think it's good or not good or whatever, is just kind of feeding the next step of this process.
Okay. All right. That's cool. That's a fun way to start. Let's unpack it using the battering cycle. I think that could be really interesting and helpful for people.
Okay, cool.
So unfortunately, because this is an audio only, I don't, have a visual aid. It's really nice to have a visual aid with this one because it's a process and it's a circle. But let me try to describe it verbally, and then how about if I just go through and describe it, and then maybe we could use the content of your
Perfect.
weight as to flesh out the different parts of it.
Yeah.
So the way it works is that it's a circle, and the circle is all going around an unmet need. Okay, and maybe we'll come back to that in a minute, but just to for people to keep in mind that that's what this is doing is it has a circling around an unmet need and making sure the need never gets met, and simultaneously maintains a sense of unworthiness or that there's something wrong with us or that kind of thing. The model actually comes out of psychological uh, work that people have done to a way of kind of mapping out domestic violence. And I'm not going to
Hmm.
go into how that works exactly, but that's what the original name came from the battering cycle, because somebody gets battered, the wife typically, stereotypically, the woman or the wife gets battered, and it describes the process of how that happens. And I was taught this at the monastery that that same process that happens like between two people also happens internally with ourselves, and we batter ourselves using some content. So the way that it starts is there is some kind of decision to be perfect, and everybody has got that. I'm going to be the perfect, husband, wife, worker, son, daughter, whatever it might be, partner, or I'm gonna perfectly manage my life. I'm gonna get it all under control.
Hmm.
I'm gonna make this life work for myself. And underneath that is this idea that I'm gonna be the person I should be. Uh,
Hmm.
and do you know how it is? And feel free to jump in at any point with this, Janet. Um, do you know how it is that we're taught when we're kids that there's something wrong with us? There's I'm not good enough. I'm not the person I should be. That kind of thing. Do you recognize that in yourself, Janet?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was actually thinking literally about the notion of battering cycle is that and how this starts so young. I remember, and specifically to my weight, this is a little personal, but I think it's pertinent, is that
Mm-hmm.
my mom used to hit me or batter me for
Mm-hmm.
not being a certain weight because I was a ballet dancer, or if I ate certain foods. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, yeah, that's what used to physically happen, and
Yeah,
now it's internally happening. And I would offer, at least in my experience, I think in my life it's worse when I do it to myself. And I think,
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm 41 and I'm like, I've been doing this for way too long. Something's got to
Yeah,
change. I
yeah.
got to get
Well,
out of
that
the cycle.
yeah, that's fascinating. Actually, that's not always the case. That it's a literal sort of translation outside
Hmm.
inside, but so your mom beat you because you weigh too much or because you ate certain things, and
Both. Yep.
that got
Hmm.
directly transferred into your mind and internalized in your mind, and now you're doing exactly the same thing to yourself. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm in the circle, which I know we're just at the beginning of.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a decision be perfect, and there's some kind of standard that we set up that we have to meet. Do you have a sense of what yours is in general?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, mine is I want to be thin. I mean, in the deepest sense, I'm sure I wish I had a totally different body type.
Okay.
um but at least for this year, it's that I wish I was 30 to 40 pounds lighter.
Mm-hmm.
Even
Mm-hmm.
though I know big picture it's so much more, but if we're you're are you kind of asking just kind of on the baseline of
Well, yeah,
what I tell myself?
there's that, yeah, because that's what you're telling yourself, and then under that, there's an implied something that you're probably when you're
Oh,
in the
yeah.
process you're not aware of, because, like, if you were to be thin, that would mean something. Like, what would
Yes.
that mean if you were thin?
Yeah, and this is the one that what's so interesting, David, is I'm really intellectually aware of what's happening, but I'm just
Right.
still kind of stuck in it.
Yep.
Is that I know, and I've seen this in other people and in myself over and over, it's that I'm not good enough. I'm not good.
Right.
I'm not perfect the way I am. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's something wrong with me.
Yeah, there's
Is the
something
big,
wrong with you. You're not perfect the way
yep,
you are. You're not good enough. Yeah. And
yep.
those in my experience, I would use that exact same language for me and the way I was
Hmm.
conditioned. And I think those are essentially universal. And people get into things that are a little bit less universal, like, you're too needy, you're too much, these
Yep.
kinds of things, that are messages that people got when they were little kids. But even underneath that, I think it all comes down to, there's something wrong with me. I'm not the person.
I exactly. I was just about to say that. Even all the little ones, are all going back to the same thing. And that's what's interesting, I find, is I can intellectually understand that, but when you get stuck in it, it's hard to see your way out, or to really believe that I am good enough, you
Right.
know.
Yeah, that's true. So let me say that this way, see what you think, that
Hmm.
you can step back to a place of awareness of your process,
Hmm.
and you can see what's happening. But there's also the place where you get sucked into the process and you identify with the person who believes all of it and experiences it as true.
Yeah, exactly. I think the word
Right.
believe is the
Hmm.
the key word of that. I really believe. Oh, and tell me if I'm jumping the gun, but I think, oh, well, it's just because I'm not working hard enough, or I don't
Right.
have enough willpower, or
Right. Hmm.
I'm addicted to gluten, or
Right.
instead
Right.
of
Yeah.
something else.
And underneath that, you really believe there's something wrong with you. Right.
Yes.
And it
Yep.
makes, and we all do, we are all taught to, and the extent to which people don't believe that is, in general, I think, the extent to which they have looked into that and seen the fiction of that and let it go. But
Yep.
it's really understandable that we would, because this stuff, of course, that, I call this self-hatred. This is the process of self-hatred. You know, these self-hating messages are implanted in our minds when we're little bitty kids, 1 and 2 years old,
Yep.
and it happens at such an early age that, we have no defenses against that. We have no awareness that's happening. We have no ability to question anything that's happening to us. And so it happens so early that it gets internalized, it gets lodged in our minds and put in a place where we can't see it. It's back
Hmm.
there behind our eyeballs, and for most people, as far as I can see, most people assume the reality of these basic self-hating messages that were implanted a really long time ago their entire lives and never question them.
Yeah, and I have to say, David, I remember when I first met you and you used that word or words, and I remember thinking, "Wow, that's extreme,"
Mm-hmm.
or "No, that's not me,"
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's so when I really unpacked it and kind of observed myself, and in this is one of my bigger struggles, right, content wise in my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I realized, oh my gosh, that word or that phrase or whatever that it is spot
It
on.
really applies, doesn't it? Yeah, I've
Mhm.
experimented. I learned that phrase at the monastery. That's not original me. And I took that out of the monastery and started using it. And people had, really strong reactions against that word.
Yeah,
Like, no,
yeah,
that is
me
way too
too.
strong, you know. And and I have experimented with other ways of talking about it, but I keep coming back to that actually describes it. The one little thing, though, we're going off on a tangent here, but we'll come back
Yep,
to the battery
nice.
cycle and everything. This is
Mhm.
casual. But the one little thing about it is that it's not. I'm not in the self-hating process is not hating the self in the sense of our authentic nature.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's the self-hating process is hating itself. It's hating
Mm.
the self that gets created and maintained through the whole condition process. So what the self-hating, so I'm really going to go off on a tangent here. So we'll come back.
No, I love
But
it. I think it's helpful.
what the self-hating process does is it basically diverts a person's attention away from what's actually going on, and it makes you self-conscious. So and it makes sense if you think about it. Like if I'm taught as a little kid there's something wrong with me, I'm not good enough and everything, which I was, just like
Mhm.
everybody else. I was just taught that just like everybody else. And if I believe that, then anytime something happens to that seems like that, it proves that that's true. So in your case, that you look in the mirror and you see that you have extra weight, and then
Yep.
here comes the self-hate. It's like, what, oh, I can't believe blah 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 blah, or whatever it's saying. And so what that does is it takes all of the attention and puts it into this self-conscious, story about how there's something wrong with me and I need to fix it. And it makes it so that there isn't awareness and attention available for stuff like, well, but wait a second, questioning the whole thing. Like,
Mhm.
wait a second. I mean, who says that being a certain body size has anything to do with a person's self-worth, for example? Like, where does that come from? Like
Right.
who, like, show me some proof of that. Like, where's that written in some kind of, the big book or something? you know Stuff like, or also it diverts the attention from people catching on to, now wait a second, I'm being told that,
Mhm.
That's actually not me thinking. This is a subtle place, but this is an an important move to make in life and practice, is from believing that what's happening in my mind is me thinking, to seeing that most or all of it is actually conditioned mind talking to me, right?
Right.
And so it diverts attention from that fact. It's like, wait a second, time out. This is like, I actually don't think this. I'm being told this. I'm being talked into believing this over and over and over and over again, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, month by month, year by year. And
Yeah.
and if we, so in other words, that it keeps the self-hating, it causes the self-conscious where, so my thoughts and my attention is all on what's wrong with me, and so I can't catch on to the system that's creating the illusion that there is something wrong with me. Do you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead.
And what part of the because I mean, as you share that, and I've obviously heard it before, but I'm like, that's exactly what happens when I am not able to disidentify, use the practice, use the tools, and kind of, do what you shared just now about being
Mm-hmm.
able to, really see what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
But what
Mm-hmm.
part of the battery cycle is that part? I mean, I just do that self-hate
Okay.
so
Yeah. That's
much.
great.
Yeah.
Great question, Janet. So imagine a circle, and there's 4 steps, and I've only got to one, but we're working on even sort of a half of one, but we'll work our way around. But
Yep.
imagine a circle, okay, and the process goes around and around in the circle, and inside the circle, of course, there's space, and
Hmm.
in that space is that self-hating message, whatever it may be. I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. Or, in more particular versions of that, forms of that. Like for me, I'm a loser. Nobody likes me. Nobody cares about me. I don't deserve to have good things happen. And, all this stuff that is
Yep.
they're sort of like subcategories of this basic, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in the middle of it is that message. And when we're going around and around and around, and what that going around and around does is create and maintain the illusion that that message is real.
Hmm.
So it's kind of
Hmm.
like, this is the image I've always liked. It's sort of like, do you know, I don't know if people still do this, but you wouldn't, you have kids, but you know how, or at least back in the day, we used to, you take a quarter or a nickel or something and you put it on the table and put a piece of paper over it,
Uh-huh.
and then you take a pencil and you go back and forth, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
form the form of the quarter shows up on the page, and you get to see, what's etched on it and everything. Do people still do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Now they do it with leaves and other things too.
Oh, they
Hmm.
do. Oh, okay. People have
Yeah.
moved on to better things.
Hmm.
That's good. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's kind of like that, because the this idea that there's something wrong with me is completely, and you sort of implied this a minute ago, completely bogus,
Right. Right.
absolutely false, has no basis in reality. So much to say, we can go so far down that road that we can say there's no such thing as right and wrong and good and bad. Even
Hmm.
those
Hmm.
things, there's no such thing as those concepts. Those are things we just totally make up in order to control ourselves and others, and to beat ourselves up in others. That's all. That's what that stuff is for. And so it's an illusion. So how does an illusion get maintained over time in a way that it seems real? Well, it has to be brought into a person's awareness continually, like over and over and over again. So it's like that pencil going back and forth. You go
Mm.
back and forth, and this image comes through. Is that quarter actually on the paper? No, the quarter is underneath the paper. But it looks like, you've got this image there that seems real. And so in the same way, we're repeating to ourselves over and over again what's wrong with us and why, and here's all the proofs and blah blah blah, all this self-hating stuff. And if we keep repeating it, then there's a sort of a reality, a quote with quotes, this assumed reality that just stays, it appears constant and unquestionable.
Yeah. And I don't know if you experienced this before you went to the monastery, that sometimes you're just so in it that you don't see any other reality. I
Mm-hmm.
do find, since I've found the practice,
Mm-hmm.
that even this one, which is one of my meatier subjects, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to, not always, quite frankly, but detach and know that what is really so.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like a lot of, I don't know, I have a lot of friends even, or just people that I've known throughout my life, that there is no awareness of that this isn't true. That
Oh, I mean, of course, I can't know because I can't jump into another person's brain and see what's going on there. Although that would be fascinating.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to do that, but I can't.
Hmm.
So I don't know, but boy, it sure appears the way to me too. I would say the vast majority of humanity is identified inside the battering cycle in some way. And the battering cycle is just, it's one model for describing how conditioned mind works, how a
Yep.
certain aspect of conditioned mind, so that's all that is. But by and large, I would say the great mass of humanity, like 99.99999, are identified in conditioned mind in the battering cycle, believing it's absolutely true, believing, so thoroughly believing there's something wrong with them, or and they're not good enough, that they don't know they believe that.
Hmm. Yep.
You
Yep.
got to be
Yep.
real, you got to really believe it to not even know that that's there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I sure projected that, that's pretty much where everybody's living.
Yeah. And that's why I'm able to see more and more in myself when I really believe something and I go, okay, that's something I got to look into, or time to do some work around that. And
Hmm.
that's what happened
Hmm.
with me in the last week or two of, all right, I'm not seeing true me,
Right.
beautiful, wonderful, amazing me.
Right.
It's very, I'm lured into this
Hmm.
cycle,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, Dan. And then if you start to dope out how it works, which of
Hmm.
course is why we have these kind of conversations and why we get together in group and all this stuff and why we do our classes and everything, is to see how this stuff works. Because if you start to see how it works, then you can step back into a place of awareness, out of a place of belief. A place of belief is a place without awareness. It's
Yep.
a place of
Yep.
assumption. I'm just assuming something that was taught to me is real and true, and I'm not questioning it. So we can step out of that into a place of awareness. So for example, I mean, this is kind of implied with you in what you were just saying. You're going along and you realize, what? I am suffering over this. I am
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
beat up. This is not any fun. I hate it. Like you said, I need help. I need to get out of this. And then, so that's one thing, just to be aware that there is such a thing as a process that could be going on that causes suffering. So
Yep.
just
Yep.
just that awareness gives a person a way to step out of conditioned mind into a place of awareness. And then something like, okay, well, all right, so I'm really suffering. I'm obviously really identified somewhere in conditioned mind. All right, I know that if I'm suffering and I'm identified in somewhere in conditioned mind, then I'm believing something that's not true.
Yep.
Because that's always how it is. No matter where you are in conditioned mind, if you're in conditioned mind, you're believing something that's not true. So, and so if you're aware of that and you say, oh, well, okay, what am I believing that's not true? And then you can start to question and look, and all of that helps to get a person outside of the place of being within the system, believing the truth of it, into a place of awareness, questioning it, and heading towards a place of clarity where we can see what's really going on.
Exactly. I love that. But here's what, and I'm curious where in the cycle this is. It's so I can do that. And I do it. I probably do it, each day. But then I know I'm still in the cycle because I will say something like, "No, Janet, you're perfect just the way you are," right? Or I'll
Hmm.
do some of the tools that I've learned, and
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
you know, kind of remember me. But then I go, oh, but no, you're just lazy, or I'll eat the food and then I'll just beat myself up over it, or,
Right.
or whatever. So what
Right.
part of the cycle is that when you can detach a little bit, but then you're just brought right back in with something,
Okay.
whatever the content is.
Yeah, the stepping out of it into a place of awareness, and then accessing the ability to use those kind of tools, like that self mentoring, self compassion kind of stuff that you were just articulating. That's not a part of the
Hmm.
cycle.
Yep.
That
Yeah,
that's what happened,
that's
right? That's a
yeah,
part.
that's
Yeah.
a practice, right? Because I'm
Right.
working and
Right.
mhm.
Yeah. That happens when you have let go of being identified with a person who believes fundamentally that there's something wrong with her, or she's not good enough or whatever, and you step back to a place of awareness. So that's that movement.
Yep.
Everything else you talked about, oh, you're too lazy, the problem is you're lazy, or getting talked into eating the thing, or whatever
Hmm.
else it might be. That is the cycle. So the cycle is
Yep.
kind of like, it's this, here's another image I've always liked. It's kind of like conditioned mind is fishing. and it's just, it's got bait on the hook, and it's just looking for something that you'll
Oh yeah.
snap at, right? And it's trying this and it's trying that. And then, when it knows, it's been fishing a long time, and it's doing it all day long, every day, right? It knows what
Right.
you're going to bite, right? So it doesn't have to
Yeah,
cast
totally.
very often. So it throws
Right.
in. So you're in this nice place of centered awareness, and you're bringing unconditional love and acceptance to yourself, and you're embracing the person who is trapped in that cycle in unconditional love and acceptance, and all these things that we talk about. And conditioned mind's back there going, okay, this isn't working. What have we got? And then it puts a little thing on the hook, and it's like, oh, well, the problem is you're too lazy. And then, you're highly conditioned to believe that, and it's got you, hooks you, and then it's got you, and then you're pulled back into the cycle. So it's constantly
Exactly.
trying to pull us back into the cycle, and go where we're going around and around and around, and getting beat up and feeling bad about ourselves, and suffering, and being outside of life unfolding in the ways that we talk about.
Yeah, and it just gets, and I don't know if this is other people's experience, but it sure is mine, that it just gets really believable to the point that if I do some of the self-love, I'll be like, no, that's not
Right.
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 And I'll start eating something and then I eat the whole bag. And because
Mm-hmm.
like you said, I that's one of my things. So I'm lured
Mm-hmm.
back into to
Mm-hmm.
believe that. And it just feels
Yeah.
crappy.
It does. And something that's really been on my mind lately, and I've articulated this in several places. I can't remember if I've done it on the podcast, but it's just been, working with people and watching what people do, out there in the world. It's just become really clear that, for someone who is identified in conditioned mind, their absolutely number one priority, way, 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 way beyond anything like peace, joy, happiness, love, well-being, belonging, connection, joy, clarity, any of those kind of things.
Mhm.
Way beyond that, so much so that it doesn't even, those things don't even count, is maintaining identity.
Ooh, yeah.
That's because and there's a good reason for it, because this thing that we call conditioned mind is a survival system. And let me go off on another little tangent here, because I actually talked to somebody just earlier today about, she had listened to one of the podcasts, and she was like, I get it when you're talking about conditioned mind, that you don't really mean it's an evil force, like somebody who's out to get you, but it sure sounds like it when you're talking about it. And so
Yeah, good.
it
Yeah.
just reminded me to, clarify that, but it's not that, I don't see it that way. It's not intelligence. It's not like, the devil. It's an automated machine, is all it is. It's a highly intricate, sophisticated, really, really good at what it does machine, but that's all it is a machine. And it just does what it does automatically. So, some kind of response comes in. So, like, for example, there was a thing that went out in the Daily Dharma recently. I don't know if you saw it, that said, ask people to consider that when you get triggered and go into conditioned mind, the thing that triggered you is actually something positive, not something negative.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Hmm.
like love, like there, or possibility, some kind of expansion. That's the thing that actually first happens, that causes conditioned mind to kick in. And then
Yeah,
after
yeah.
that, there's all the negative stuff, because what it brings in is all the negative stuff. And the negative stuff is there, to keep us in the system. But anyway,
Right.
like that. So, but it's an automated program. So so somebody expresses love, if that's going to kick in the conditioned machine, but it's not intentional on the part of conditioned mind, because conditioned mind is not like a person. It doesn't have intelligence. It's more like a machine. It's just that kind of stimulus will produce that kind of response, because its job is to keep us in a state of survival. And so that to me explains why, we're so invested in identity and being in conditioned mind, because we were led to believe when we were little bitty kids that if we did not, because we were punished and humiliated and everything for being authentic, we learned that if we're not in the survival system where we can be somebody who is trying to be the right person and trying to avoid being the wrong person, and trying to fix what's wrong with us, that's how we're surviving this world.
Yeah, I can really see that. And it fits with the, I'm picturing the circle that you shared, the battery cycle of like, where you just kind of can't get out. What is that
Mm-hmm.
thing that happens in the ocean with the water? I forgot what it's called with all the circles, but like you're
Mm-hmm.
just,
Like the undertow. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't remember what it is, but just thinking of like the times that I felt just, you're just so stuck and you almost,
Mhm.
I mean, I've felt this way before, like, ah, screw it, I'm never going to lose weight, you know, whatever.
Right, right.
And then,
Well,
so it's just
mhm.
this defeatist mentality, you know,
Absolutely. And
or,
it goes so far that, I'll have people kind of get, I mean, I've never had anybody get physically violent with me, but I've had people get pretty close to verbally violent with me as I'm attempting to get people to let go of their self-hating stories.
hmm,
It's like,
yeah,
no, you can't make me. You can't make me let that go. And it's just, yeah, it's really wild,
yeah,
but there's
yeah,
good reasons for it. It makes a lot of sense. And another part of the thing about conditioned mind, in addition to it, it's not the devil, it's just a machine, is it was set up a really long time ago to help us to survive, and it did. It did, and it does a really good job, and we can thank it, and even be kind of grateful to it to a certain degree. And as adults, it's time to let it go, because you don't actually need conditioned mind to function and be happy in this world. Quite the opposite. I mean, you've got to get rid of it and just throw it out the window if you're going to have any shot of being truly happy on this earth.
yeah. That makes me think of like the idea that it's almost comfortable. I mean, I don't really think so in my kind of clear conscious way,
Hmm, hmm.
but you just kind of get into the system and just, you know, into the routine, that it's almost like to break free from it. That's where it's like, ugh. Or, and it also takes work, right? Like a
Hmm,
lot of
hmm.
work
It does. Hmm.
to get out of that.
Yep.
And
And
yeah.
courage. And courage,
Mhm.
because it's a survival system. And if I'm basically saying, you know what, I'm going to let this thing go, everything in me is going to say, you can't do that, because we're going to die.
Yes.
When we look at it, it's like, well, that's crazy. That we're not going to die if, I don't get to, beat myself up over, gaining a few pounds. But inside of it, it feels like it, right? I'm going to die. And so it takes a tremendous amount of courage, actually, to let that go and trust that if I let this go, I will actually be okay.
Yeah, who said it? You've taught it, and I think about it all the time. Did Buddha say that willingness is the key? Because I am always saying, okay, at least I'm willing. You know,
Yeah. That's
I'm.
actually, that's in the morning recitation. That comes from my teacher.
Oh, okay.
And it maybe
Mhm.
maybe came from her teacher too. I'm actually not sure, but that
I
was,
just love that. Hmm.
yeah. There's a at the end of the recitation. There's a recitation we say every morning at the beginning of the first sit of the day, and at the end it says, "Willingness is the name of the key to the gate of awakening. For even to awaken from deep sleep and face the new day, there must be the willingness to do it." And that kind of goes on. Yeah, we have to be willing, and we have to be willing to, particularly to let go of these ways that we have been taught that we have to follow in order to survive, and question them, and take this big leap of faith into the possibility that without that, as I said, I'm going to be well, and even more, I'm going to thrive. That's the way to actually be happy on this earth. Yeah.
Exactly. And break the, I mean, I feel like this is such psychology 101, but break the cycle, right?
Yep.
Get out of
Yeah,
it.
that's for sure.
Mhm.
Okay, good. That's a good segue. That was a long digression away from the battering cycle, but a
That's
but a good
great.
one. But a good one.
Yeah,
So
I
let's go
love it.
back, and so we've got 4 steps, okay, in the battering cycle. So and you could kind of start anywhere, but I'm going to call the step number 1 is the decision to be perfect.
Hmm.
So I have decided, because I have this, in the middle is this idea there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough, that kind of thing. I'm the wrong person. I'm going to decide, you know what? I am going to be perfect to try to counterbalance that. You know,
Hmm.
I'm gonna prove to myself that's not true, even though I'm not actually aware that's there. I mean, almost nobody's aware that that's there. But I am going to, what's gonna save me, and is what's gonna help me to have a good and happy life and get all my needs met. Because remember, also in the middle of that circle is a need that's not being met. So
Right.
what's going to help me get my needs met is to be perfect. And if I'm perfect, then everything's going to be okay.
Well,
Right.
in a very literal sense with weight, I think it's natural. You go, well, I'm going to be perfect and I'm not going to eat
Right.
whatever the things, you know, and I'm going to have a perfect diet. I'm going to, you know, so it's very literal.
It is literal. Yeah, it is
Mhm.
literal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then that sets up step 2, which is the stress. So that
Mm.
sets up this stress, because it is not possible to be perfect.
Yeah. Like dieting
Especially,
doesn't work.
well,
Hmm.
that's true. Yeah. And
Hmm.
even if it did, like, even if, somehow through some great exercise and willpower or something, you got thin as a toothpick, um, conditioned mind would make sure that wasn't enough.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I've
Yeah.
seen that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're still not good enough. You still don't have the right body, or whatever, So, and so there's this
Exactly.
stress of trying to make happen something that can't possibly happen. And the
Hmm.
stress builds and stress builds, but that's, within, if somebody doesn't have awareness of how this works, that's the only option you've got. So you've got to, just keep trying harder to be perfect in whatever way that's defined for a person. It's different for different people. Not everybody struggles with a weight, of course, but somebody else might struggle with something else.
Exactly. Right.
And so, and that content is just really just being used to create this sense of imperfection and the sense of there's something wrong with you. So, the stress builds and builds and builds and builds, and it gets to a point where I can't handle the stress anymore. The stress of trying to be the right person and failing basically over and over again. And it's like, so I've got it all together. I'm eating all the right stuff. I'm exercising everything, but meanwhile, the stress is coming because I know this isn't going to last. And
Hmm. Hmm.
I can feel, I'm just barely, I'm holding on with my fingernails, and finally it gets to a point I just can't take it anymore. I can't take being in that state of stress. And of course, conditioned mind is in there creating the stress because it's going, it's setting these unrealistic standards and expectations, and it's saying, no, you're not doing it. You're gonna fail. Look at you, oh, you quitter. You're gonna quit any moment.
Yep.
Or that kind of thing. And so it's like fighting to try to make this thing happen that can't happen. And so then a person finally gets to the point where it's like, I just can't handle this anymore. I need some relief from the stress. And then they go
Yeah.
to step 3, which is the coping behavior. Right.
There you
So in your
go.
case, it's
Hmm.
going to have something to do with food, right? Like what's that for you?
Yep. Yeah. Eating a whole lot of French fries and just saying, forget it. And eating
Yeah.
a ton, making up for the week that I was good.
Uh-huh. Right. Yeah. And what happens? See if this fits your experience. So, and then this is the 4th step. Is feeling better and then feeling worse. So,
Exactly.
you feel
Yep.
better for a little bit, don't you? It feels great because you've relieved the stress, and also, there's some pleasure. You've been denying yourself this particular kind of pleasure, so there's some pleasure there too. So that feels good.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
But
No, not,
then,
I mean, in my case, not super long pleasure. It's pretty quick,
yeah, right, right.
because of my
Right.
mind, because of what I'm thinking. And
Right.
yeah. Hmm.
Well, exactly, because then, the next thing kicks in. So it's the 4th stage is 2. It's feeling better than feeling worse. So when your
Yep.
mind kicks in, it's the feeling worse, right? Oh,
Yeah.
I can't believe you did that. Oh, you're such a loser. You have no willpower. There you go again, whatever it might be, right? And so there's the beating,
Exactly. And
right?
makes you never not want to try. I mean, that's the beating.
That's the
That's
beating.
it right there. I mean,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
bigger beating.
Right.
Hmm.
And the thing that does is that has proven, supposedly, not really, but supposedly proven that the belief that's in the middle is true. See, you're not
Exactly.
good enough. You just can't
Yep.
handle it. You're not the person you should be. See, once again, you have proven that that's true.
Yeah, and I feel like that beating is can go on, and then and it gets very dramatic. You'll never be this way,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes like 20 years out,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna die. Whatever. Like, at least in my experience, it's really big and
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous, but
Uh-huh. Yeah.
believable because I've just proved it.
Right.
My actions, I've proved it.
Right. Supposedly. Right.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
exactly.
And then that sets up the beginning of the cycle again. Because so you take the beating and then you're just a squeezed out sponge for a little while, just all your energy sucked out of you. And then, that can't last forever. And so it's like, well, all right, you start to come out of it, you start to gain some energy back,
Yep.
because that's a different way of talking about this process. It's an energy management system, and conditioned mind has just sucked all your energy through that beating, sucked it out of your body. And
Yes.
then after a while, the energy starts to come back. And then where's the next place you go? Well, I blew it that time, but not this time. This time, I'm never going to eat French fries again, whatever.
Hmm.
And there's the decision to be perfect. And then that sets up the stress, that sets up the coping behavior, that sets up the beating, that then sets up the next decision to be perfect, and the stress and the coping behavior, the beating, and around and around and around we go.
Exactly. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
hamster on those little wheels,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just, it really is. I mean, I think it's a great way to describe it. So then my question would be, I mean, I can answer a lot of this myself and I'm trying to practice it, but
Mhm.
just kind of, so what do you do?
Okay.
How do you get out of it?
Yeah. Tell me your experience. What do you see about that at this point?
Um, well, we just, I mean, the biggest thing for me, and I've talked about this even on our last podcast, is I have to disidentify. I have to kind of literally hover above myself and look at me,
Mhm.
not like, in a way, coming out of my body
Mhm.
and saying to myself all the things that I know I really am. You're enough, you're beautiful, whatever it is, fill in the blanks, all the
Mhm.
true things about me. So I really have to do that.
Okay,
um
before you go on,
yeah.
that's big actually what you just said. Let me
Mhm.
pull that apart a little bit for the
Okay, great. Yeah.
listening. Yeah. So what you're saying, so in terms of what the battering cycle and what we're talking about, so there's the belief in the middle. There's something wrong with me, not good enough, whatever. And so if you disidentify, and that word means you're stepping out of the cycle into a place of awareness. So out of
Mhm.
identity into a place of awareness. And if you accomplish that, then you have moved into a place where compassion is, and also an understanding of what's really going on. Like I was saying earlier about how the self-hate part creates a self-consciousness that makes you blind so you can't see what's going on. This is what happens when you let go of that. You can move to a place where you actually see what's going on. There's a person who is believing all this stuff, who's trapped in the battering cycle, and who's believing that in this case she's not good enough or whatever. She's not the right person. And so from that place of compassionate awareness, you can actually reach into the battering cycle and touch the person who is in there, who believes it
Mm.
and who is suffering over it, because you have disidentified from that person. You're no longer the person inside who believes it, but there is still a person inside who believes it. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
you from that place you can reach in. And I loved what you said, because what you said is, from that place you're in touch with what's true. So you can tell her what's true. The battering cycle is going around and around and around. And of course, it's all happening in her head. And it's basically telling her over and over what's not true about it, how she's not good enough in various ways over and over and over again. You can see that from that bigger place, you can see that's not true. And you can
Mhm.
tell her what is true. And that's how suffering ends. If you can reach her and get through to her and surround her with love and awareness and compassion, and teach her what is really true, and teach her to let go of all of this stuff that she was taught to believe really a long time ago, that's where suffering ends. Because then the system collapses, because
Yeah.
it's not being maintained. The self-hate that it needs to maintain itself is no longer happening, and so it collapses and the person is free.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, I mean, I know that's the ultimate place to get to in all of my, whenever I'm self-hating or whenever I'm suffering.
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
find, though, with this one, so this is where I would love to hear your insights. And I've been practicing a few of things that you've shared, and I think it's helpful for others, but it's like on the little minutia of like, I'll go and I'll eat the French fries, and I can kind of pull myself out and go, "You're not a horrible person, Janet. You're beautiful." I can kind of do that. But you shared recently some ideas or a tool of like how to, like, when I'm eating the food, to just kind of observe what's happening in my mind of what story is coming. And I really loved that recently. Like just these simple little steps. Do you remember sharing those with
Yeah,
me?
see if this is what you're talking about.
Mhm.
In general, the thing that doesn't work that people kind of get stuck in is they get fixated on the content,
Yep,
and they
exactly.
try to exercise their willpower in order to break the cycle.
Mhm.
And that actually doesn't work. That never has worked. That never will work. It might work for a very short period of time, but it's not going to work long term, because it doesn't actually address anything. Because the
Sure.
trouble is not on the content level. Like for you, it doesn't have anything to do with food. It doesn't have anything to do with weight, your weight. It has to do with this belief you have that there's something wrong with you.
Exactly.
That's the problem. And in a way, and this is a radical way of looking at it, I know in a lot of ways, but this seems true to me, um, that the whole point of focusing on something like the weight, or for somebody else, it might be drinking or gambling or,
Sure,
spending money or
anything.
something like that. The whole point of focusing on that is just to maintain that idea. Like I don't think conditioned mind even cares about how much you weigh. The only reason it's pushing that is because you believe it. That's the bait
And
that you
yeah,
believe.
so believable for me. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And so like if you're focused on the content of it and you're basically trying to get skinny and avoid eating certain things or whatever. If that's the end, the entirety of the game that you're playing, it's not going to work because it's not addressing the process level, and the problem is on the process level. It's not on the content level. So instead, what we have to do is we have to focus on the process level. And here's the part I think that you're remembering, that you're driving at. In this really kind of fun, cool way, we can use the content to get at the process and undo the process. Okay. So for example, and you and I talked about this recently, but here's a good way of going about it. So you set some kind of goal or intention, and something really, really small and manageable. Like this week, I'm not going to eat French fries, something
Right.
like that.
That's good.
But not with the idea that you're not going to eat French fries.
Hmm.
With the idea that you're going to watch how conditioned mind tries to get you to eat French fries.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
that sounds like something kind of the same, but it's not. That's completely different.
It's
Those are
very
two
different.
two
Hmm.
completely different approaches, right? And so you set off into your week and you have this commitment not to eat French fries. Now you may eat them or you may not eat them, right? If
Yep.
you do, well, let's say first, if you don't. If you don't, cool. You have managed to let go of, whatever condition mind was doing. You didn't buy it, and it didn't manage to talk you into eating French fries. Cool. If you did eat the French fries, then you get to see how conditioned mind talks you into doing that. And you get to see the meaning that gets attached to that and how that is used to make you think you're not a good enough person, and all of the process stuff that is there.
Yeah. And I did that this week. I set
Oh,
this
did you?
intention.
Cool. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Do you want to hear about it
Yeah,
now?
yeah, I definitely do.
Yeah, so I set the intention. I picked an easier one. Dairy isn't great for my
Easier
body.
than
I
French
have,
fries.
yeah.
Okay.
French fries isn't that hard, but it's this one affects me more. I have a Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid
Oh, okay.
disorder.
Okay.
And one of the things that isn't great for me is gluten. That one's a little too hard, so I started easier with dairy. And I said,
Okay.
I'm not going to eat dairy, but I decided to try out this idea of I'm going to observe what happens and
Mm-hmm.
see what story I get into. And it was really different from other times where I've said, you know, where in a way like weight loss programs say like let's redefine your relationship with food. I was like, I'm not
Right.
going to necessarily think about the food. I'm going to think
No.
about me, my
Right.
relationship with me, right?
Your relationship,
And
and
so
particularly your relationship with conditioned mind, both actually. Your relationship
exactly.
with you, Janet, the authentic person, and your relationship with conditioned mind. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually the latter is what I meant. And so I just observed it without judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And I was successful for about a day, and then on day two, maybe
Uh-huh.
not even, let's be
Uh-huh.
really honest. Day two, I was like, I need some ice cream. I don't even like ice cream, which is another interesting part of the
Right.
battery
Right. It's
cycle that
interesting.
I'll eat stuff that I don't even really
Yeah.
enjoy. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yep. Yeah. It's more.
Typical.
Yep. An even better way to feel bad. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't even enjoy it, which
Right.
is again,
Right.
I'm like, I'm such a perfect example of this cycle.
Mhm.
And then not me, not real me. So then I did it, and what it was different for me than I've done in the past was just I saw myself get kind of negative, and then I stopped myself
Ah.
and just said, you know what, you're eating it.
Mhm.
This doesn't define you.
Mm,
You're enjoying some ice cream.
mm,
You can never eat it again, or you can have it tomorrow. It was just a totally different
uh-huh,
experience because I was aware of what was happening, and it wasn't, I felt like I was in control, David, because
uh-huh.
I was watching and leading the conversation instead of the
Yeah,
conversation
Yeah.
happening to
Oh,
me.
this is so good, Janet. I love this. Yeah, this is it. That's it. That's it right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you moved to a place of compassion and awareness, right? And you didn't say this, but implied it. You didn't get a beating.
I didn't. In fact, I said that was really really great, and I didn't picture it like attaching to my thighs. I just enjoyed it and thought, and
Uh-huh.
I thought, I wonder if my body will digest this easier because and this may be too woo woo, but it's how I thought, was because I have such a negative connotation around certain foods that I kind of think, the mind body connection. And so I let it go. So I I just felt better and I enjoyed it. And then I
Right.
went to beating up myself and then I was like, no, stop. And then I
Yes.
moved on.
Ah,
Mhm.
that's so good, Janet. Yeah, and what that does in the context, I'm so glad. Thanks for bringing out the battering cycle. This is really kind of gives a good framework for this, because in the framework you're using, what that does is you are undoing the belief that's in the
Mm,
middle of the
mhm.
cycle, right?
Right, right.
Because that beating
Mhm.
comes in, of course, it's trying to reinforce that belief. See, there you go. Once again, you blew it. Now it proves, this negative stuff that you're taught to believe about yourself.
Yes,
But
yeah.
you didn't go there. You instead you were aware of it as it arose and it tried to assert itself. You said no. You're in the choice point that comes from awareness, and in that, so you're undoing the cause of the whole battering cycle is there to make that belief seem real and true. And if you don't believe that thing to be real and true, the whole thing falls to pieces.
And you said that, David, and I believe it, but I hadn't had experience with it in direct relationship to this
Mm-hmm.
practice of
Uh-huh.
but I'll tell you, a couple days in, I was like thinking, "Oh, I wanted mozzarella with tomatoes," and then I
Uh,
was like, "No, I don't really want that." And
right.
normally, I think I would just eat it to do it, whatever the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Mm-hmm.
had said
Mm-hmm.
that, like, if we can kind of detach from it and get out of the cycle, that that behavior won't even necessarily
Yeah.
be there,
Oh,
right?
it's so good, Janet. Yeah, because what happens if you're doing it the conditioned way, where it's focused on the content, you're trying to exercise your will to make something, stop doing something that you don't want to do, then the very best you can get is, I really, really want this and can't have it.
Yep. Yeah.
That's as far as that goes. And of course, how long is that going to last? There's
Not long
yeah,
for me, at least.
yeah, that doesn't work. But what you're talking about is different because you're undoing the cause, and that frees the whole thing up. And so you don't need to, if I don't need to like eat the ice cream so that I can feel bad about myself, which is what's
Mm,
happening, right? That's why you eat the ice cream, is so that you can feel bad about yourself.
exactly. Right, right.
That's the only reason to do it. I mean, other than, it tastes good for certain people. You don't like it sounds like, particularly, but I do. It tastes good.
Right,
So
right.
if I'm not in the battering cycle, I can just eat ice cream and enjoy it, and then, it's done. I forget about it. But within the condition, the battering cycle, it's getting used, and so I eat the ice cream in order to so I can take a beating. If I'm not doing that, there's no longer any reason to eat the ice cream other than some legitimate reason to eat the ice cream. And so where that leads, instead of leading to the very best is, I really, really want this and I can't have it, what this leads to is, what, I actually don't want it. I don't want that.
Mhm,
Because I eat the ice cream, it's full of sugar. It's going to feel, really good for like 10, 15 seconds, something like that, or maybe a little bit longer. And then I'm going to feel terrible because it's a bunch of
mhm.
sugar and that's going to make me feel like crud. I don't want it. I don't want to do that. I don't want to feel like crud right now. And so it puts us in a completely different position of awareness and clarity where we can make, decisions that truly take care of us instead of ones that just perpetuate conditioning.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, David, it just it makes me just feel so tender at
Mm,
the possibility of
mhm,
treating myself that
mhm,
way.
mhm,
And it just feels so different. It feels slower, clearer, like
mhm,
grounded. It's just
mhm.
it's a different sense than all the
Right.
other kind of frenetic
Yeah. Yeah, because
feeling,
you're present and you're aware. Ironically, you're in your body. You're
Yep.
actually inhabiting your body. there's love there, there's compassion there. And here's the other thing too. So I want to go back to one other little end that I haven't tied together, which is at the very beginning, I said in the middle of the circle is a need that's not being met.
Hmm.
Right. And sort of kind of in the way I look at it in my mind, just because I've kind of have this image, that self-hating idea is sort of almost like kind of sitting on top of it, kind of like covering over that need, and it's
Hmm.
kind of keeping it from being met. And if you remove the self-hating idea, it becomes obviously absurd that there's anything wrong with me, that I'm not good enough, because how could that be? There's no such thing as good enough. How could it be that I'm not good enough? That doesn't make any sense. I just exist. I am just here and I exist. I'm in a state of being. How is it possible that that state of being could be in any kind of framework that's real, that is like a good and bad kind of framework? That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't exist. You don't see that in nature. That only
Right.
happens inside human conditioned minds. So anyway, um, that's kind of covering over this need that's not being met. If you pluck that out of there, you say, okay, that's obviously absurd. I'm not believing that crap anymore. Then
Hmm.
suddenly the need that is not being met becomes apparent. And the need is always the same thing. No matter what the content is, no matter what we're struggling with, the need is always just several, different ways of saying it, but unconditional love and acceptance. Or you could
Yep.
say our own loving attention is a really nice way to
I
say it.
love that.
Yeah,
Right.
that's all. That's what we really needed. That's what's missing. What is a happy, peaceful, joyful, deep experience on this earth? It's living in a state where uh, we have our own loving attention. That's what it
Oh,
is.
David. Yeah. And whenever, you say that, or I've experienced that, or I mean, I've experienced it time and time again since finding this practice. And I know I had it, I'm sure, in many ways before finding this practice, right? I'm
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
saying, I've only been doing this for a little bit, that I've had a whole life of unhappiness, but I'll tell you, I'm finding it more and more, and it's truly delicious. Like, it is
Hmm.
way better than French fries. It's way better than ice cream.
Uh-huh.
It is just like, it just feels real and right. And I think I've said this before, like, you just want to shout it from the rooftops
Hmm.
to myself and to everyone, because it's
Hmm.
just so different than
Hmm.
what the cycle is, all the
Right.
other stuff,
Right. Everything we're taught to believe. Yeah. Yeah. And it just, I mean, and I've been doing this for a pretty darn long time at this point.
Yeah.
And it still blows my mind that that who I truly am, most essentially, most authentically, is the love and unconditional love and acceptance and clarity and compassion, that I have been seeking my whole life. I
Right,
am
right.
that. And if I can learn that I am the awareness, the acceptance, the compassion, the clarity, instead of being the person who is stuck in these beliefs and struggling over everything, then I put myself in the position to meet my own needs in this lifetime.
Right,
And
right.
I can truly take care of myself, because it's really simple. It's as simple as to get. All I need is my own loving attention. And then that is like the most difficult thing for a person to accomplish, as far as I can tell. I honestly think that's the most difficult thing for a human being to accomplish, is to get to a place where they're living in a state where they are continually receiving their own loving attention.
100%.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we're going for, and that really is possible for us, and it's just so exquisitely beautiful that's so, and really in some ways that it all is the way that it is, because like for you with your this weight thing, that's your vehicle. That's your,
Hmm.
if you choose to follow the path of practice through that issue, which I know you will, then that is going to be the vehicle for you to more deeply uh, um, find and be able to give yourself your own loving attention.
Yeah, and I used to not really believe. How many times have I asked you, do you really think, like, a person can obtain this? This absolute love and attention to ourselves. And I think in a way I didn't think it was possible because I
Mhm.
was just so stuck in it for so long of what I thought
Mhm.
was reality.
Mhm.
And it, man, it has shifted so
Mhm.
dramatically that I really believe, I mean, like you always say, it's not like we're not going to have lots of opportunities to work on things and struggles and practice opportunities, right? As you
Mhm.
say.
Mhm.
But that it is possible
Yeah.
to
Well, yes, and you know that in your experience, right? That's
exactly.
not an
Yeah.
intellectual idea for you anymore. That is an experience. Like, and you were just described that experience in relation this past week, in relationship to the ice cream. You had that experience, right?
Yep.
Where you popped out of the cycle and you were able to give love to, this is just kind of a metaphorical way of saying it, but love to the person who has been trapped in the cycle. That's what's possible. And you know that in your experience, and that's possible. And then of course it becomes practice, because what happens is, and this as well as I do, conditioned mind is extremely good at what it does. It's very powerful, it's really alluring, incredibly seductive. It knows exactly what to say that we'll believe, and it's been doing this to us since we were little bitty kids, and so it's really good at what it does. And so what it looks like then is falling into it, and then crawling back out, getting back to a place of centered awareness in the way you're describing, then falling back in it again, and just over and over and over and over again. And over time, it takes a long time, it takes a lot of work, dedication over years to really, sort of, might we say, fundamentally shift our
Sure.
relationship with conditioned mind. It takes a lot of work, but it can absolutely be done. And if somebody's willing to go into it and then just identify and come out, offer unconditional love and acceptance in the way we're talking about over and over again, eventually they'll wear it out.
Well, and I don't know if our time's wrapping up soon, but I what was helpful for me though too was just the little like, well, what do I do in the moment, right? The
Mhm.
kind of the tools. So I could say, all right, I was looking at that cheese, the mozzarella cheese at the store, and it was really nice for me to say, okay, what should I do? What's a tool that I can do? And then I did the okay, just observe myself and no
Yeah,
judgment, right? So that
yeah.
I find this practice is so beautiful because I get the big picture and I want that, but then I
Mhm.
also really appreciate like, all the tools on our tool belt that I can pull out when I'm not as clear. If
Okay,
that
cool.
makes sense.
Thanks for bringing us back to that. Yeah, it's good to get really practical. So I feel like a good way of going about this is uh, create like a practice journal or something, a place where you're processing with yourself and you're taking notes,
Hmm.
and set intentions. Like I was saying, the reason it's important to set intentions is because then that provides a mirror that you can look into to see what's going on. If there's no parameters, then everything is gobbledygook and you can't tell what's going on. But if you
Yeah.
set an intention, like I'm not going to eat dairy this week, then you end up eating dairy. Okay, well, something has happened,
Yep.
right? And so what has happened? And so, uh, like, I think and there's different ways of going about this, but this is my favorite, to set some kind of an intention, maybe like on a weekly for like a week, and then get into a routine where maybe I always want to do this at night, but not everybody feels this way. Maybe at night, I look back over the day and see, how did I do with my intention? And
Hmm.
if I did well, in the sense that I didn't break any commitments or anything, then what did I see about that? And make some notes. What did I see? Well, what did conditioned mind show up? Was I able to let that go? What happened? That enabled me to do that. On another day, maybe I haven't. Maybe I succumbed to some kind of conditioned strategy, or some little subterfuge that it did, and I, in this case, ate the dairy. Well, that's just as useful, actually.
Yeah.
In
And
some
no
ways, it's kind of,
judgment.
yeah, no judgment. That's important. No self-hate.
Mhm.
But that's just as useful. And so, I'll make my notes in. So what I learned today. And so again, it's a shift from trying to get it right on the content level. Don't worry about that. Don't worry. It's not, the point is not losing weight. The point is not eating certain things. That's not the point. The point is seeing how conditioned mind causes us to do things that we don't want to do, that are unhealthy or unproductive or whatever. And the more you can see about that process, then the more choice you have. And the more you can choose to do whatever you feel like is healthy.
Well, I think that's really revolutionary, the notion, because I feel like, at least in the content of weight gain, but probably could be with anything, any whatever, drugs or shopping, or it's always about not doing it. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah. And it doesn't,
really great.
yeah,
Mhm.
and that doesn't work. I mean, I think it works, to some degree temporarily, but you haven't resolved the problem, as we were saying earlier,
Right.
because the problem is on a process level. And the thing is, in terms of the content, so I can imagine somebody hearing what I just said, but what about, I want to lose weight. Well, what about that? Don't I get to lose weight?
Yes. Right, right, right.
And the answer is you do, but that will take care of itself.
I
Because
trust that.
yeah, because if you're not being driven to, like in this case, to eat a bunch of stuff you don't need to be eating, by this idea that you're not good enough and you got to keep maintaining that in the way we're describing earlier, if not being driven to do that, then it will eventually stop happening. Because, from a place of centered awareness, do you want to do things that are not good for you? Don't feel good? No.
Mm-mm.
That's just
Nope.
not, that's just unintelligent. Like, who wants to do that? You want me to, I'm going to do something to make me feel bad. Why? Like
Yeah.
that seems crazy, right? We only do that when we're in a conditioned state and aren't aware of the consequences of what we do. So if you move to, and this is all about moving to a place of centered awareness and acting from that place instead of from a conditioned place inside conditioned mind and inside the battering cycle. From a place of centered awareness, you're going to make good choices.
100%. And I've seen that over, like, in myself. And I
Hmm.
guess I would say to, and I think I love that you said, well, what about the person that goes, wait, I want to lose weight? I think, I've talked about it with some friends that aren't in this practice. And I think I've said to them, just try it out and see,
Hmm.
because because it's happened to me. I don't know if it will happen to you, but I my guess is, and so just kind of, being willing to try it out and just kind of observe what happens, because I know in my experience that's exactly what happened.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. And so, yeah. So I don't want anybody to have the idea that you don't also get to, have what you want, because you do, but it just comes from a different place. As the Roshi used to say, this is one of my, she said this quite regularly. It's one of my favorite things that she said, that she would say. She would talk about kind of her relationship with herself and the relationship with herself that she wanted to be in. And she would say, I love you exactly as you are. And that really is
Mm.
exactly as you are, no matter how much you weigh, no matter what you look like, any of that. I love you exactly as you are, and I'll help you be any way you want to be.
Oh, David, I love that. I
Mhm.
haven't said those words, but I've been more tender to myself when I look at myself in the mirror this week, right? And I
Mhm.
feel like,
Mhm.
all right, I'm willing, I'm gonna I'm
Yep.
gonna practice this. I know I'm not gonna be perfect, but
Yep.
I'm not allowing as easily the just, I'm mean to myself, right,
Right.
sometimes.
Right.
And I'm
Yeah.
just trying to kind of channel this bigger version of myself, and look at myself kind of like you or my husband, or other people that love me
Hmm.
would see me as.
Hmm. Right. Yep.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
It's really beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey.
this is awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you
That's
so
really fun.
much.
Can you think of anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to make sure we talked about?
um I think this feels good.
Okay.
Um, though I love your reminder that the content, because I'm thinking, oh, this is just, now I need to do this with my spending, right? Like I
Right.
can just like pick all the different things
Yeah.
in my life and kind of do some of these tools and
Yeah,
this practice.
this exact same process works for everything. It's good. I think it's good to do things one at a time in general.
Yeah.
You don't want to overdo it. But yeah, work on the weight thing. And when you kind of get a handle on that, you feel like you're making good progress. You want to bring something else in, cool. Because it is going to be. That's one of the things I love about this is that the process of letting go of these things and moving to that place of centered awareness is precisely the same no matter what the content is. So when you learn the skill, you get to take the skill and apply it everywhere. So it's a really good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So thank you. Thanks so much,
Yeah, thank
David.
you so much. Thanks for being here and helping us to explore that. I feel like it's really helpful to have to do it in a conversation like this. So yeah, thanks for your willingness, Jen, and thanks for your practice. Thanks for the practice that is making this available to you and is making it available to all of us. So really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
my absolute pleasure. Thanks.
Okay, so take care. Be well, and we'll do it again soon. Okay.
Great. Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
Okay. Bye bye.